It's the Spinnin Backfist MMA show presented by Monaco. It's Robbie, Jack Mac, and Big Ev, and we've got an awesome interview with Randy Couture. But first, we got to tell you about Monaco. Spicy margarita, watermelon, and the hard lemonade made with vodka. This stuff made with 2 shots of tequila. It's the best stuff in the business.
9% alcohol. I mean, look it. They made this one just for us, just kidding. But same colors as Spinning Backfist. Look, we got the logo in the back, same colors. This is we got to tell them our original hard lemonade brought to you by Spinning Backfist, the Monaco.
Spinnin Backfist brought to you by Monaco. Monaco brought to you by Spinnin
Yes,
Backfist.
yes.
That's the deal we basically got with these guys. It's the most delicious tequila you could ever have. I wasn't a big tequila guy before Monaco.
Ooh.
Now I am. The 2 shots, 9%, I love it.
And we got the double vodka, Don over
if
here.
you're not a big tequila guy, they got the vodka too. It's my personal favorite as the vodka guy.
Double vodka.
This is the bread and butter.
Double vodka.
It's the vodka, 9%er, good bang for your buck, good taste, gets you feeling good, loose.
Gets you feeling
ready to watch
great.
some fights.
Ready to watch this interview with Randy Couture.
And it was great. And I mean, we just finished.
He's a great guy. PFL, we're talking about the fights, we're talking about the playoffs.
How crazy Sean Strickland is.
Tim Sylvia.
Our white whale.
Love.
White whale.
Former fighter of Randy Couture.
Shout out Monaco. Thank you for sponsoring the show. Enjoy this interview with Randy Couture. All right, it's the Spinnin Backfist Show. It's Robbie, Jack Mac, and Big Ev here with the legend, Randy Couture. We're here in between some PFL events here in New York. There was one on Friday. There's one on Wednesday. It's a huge card. Shane Burgos versus Clay Collard.
Yeah.
OAM is on the card. It's an awesome one. How are you?
I'm very good. Yeah, very good. Thanks. Always good to be in New York City and get a shot. You know, be in the Hulu Theater at Madison Square Garden. It's always cool. First time I came here was when my son was fighting. He actually weighed in on that theater and on that scale that Ali weighed in on. It was a pretty nostalgic and interesting thing.
It's a great
first time
setup for fighting. We always say. I think obviously the main room at MSG is amazing. It's, magical. How many amazing things have happened there. But the Hulu Theater, I even remember last year, the environment, even on Black Friday, was phenomenal. It was sold out. We were all there. Yeah. I just always love, whether it's MMA, boxing, it's a great atmosphere.
Yeah, not a bad seat in the house.
Yeah, not a bad seat in the house at all.
Yeah.
How was the card on Friday?
Card was amazing. Yeah, great fights. Obviously, 4 finishes in the main card with the playoffs and everything at stake. And the fighters never cease to amaze me. Every single time they step up, they embrace the grind and embrace the challenge that is this format with the PFL.
Yeah.
And they do it in stellar fashion.
How do you think you would have taken to this format if it was around when you were fighting?
You know, it would have been interesting. I fought twice in one night early in my career, and that was kind of the norm back then. So, and it was a challenge. You know, you could never forecast who was going to win, who was going to advance. So you really kind of had to focus on what you do and not worry so much about what the other guy's going to do, because you just don't know. You don't have time to train and prepare anything to solve those problems. So you're operating a little more on the fly. Obviously, we've moved away from the 2 fights in one night now, but still turning around every 8 weeks, that's a big challenge. I did that in my later career. I signed, that last contract was a 7-fight deal, and I fought 5 of those 7 fights in 18 months. That was probably the most active I ever was in the 14 years I fought. So I have some idea. I shortened my camps to 6 or 7 weeks so I could turn around and go again. And thankfully I had no major injuries going into those. It allowed me to manage the camp, stay in pretty peak shape, and fight 5 times consecutively like that.
When you shorten the camps, is it still the same amount of training? You'll squish it together, or is it more, okay, I know I only have 6 to 7 weeks. I'm going to let my body rest. Yeah. And I know I may miss out on an extra session here or there. Or is that a balancing act for a lot of guys?
I think it is a balancing act for sure, and you have to figure that out. And I think a lot of these guys, certainly some of these marquee names that have signed and thought, I'm just going to blow through everybody in the PFL. They're not at my level. Obviously, it hasn't worked out that way. No. And I think it's a big important part is to front load that first camp, get a full good 10-week camp in, get yourself in peak shape, and then you can shorten. You can take a week off or a week and a half if you've got stitches after that first regular season fight. And now you're looking at a 6-week camp to get peaked again, which that peak shouldn't be that far away because you haven't been out that long. And that's kind of how you roll in, to that one after the next. Hopefully you don't sustain any serious problems, tearing a ligament or something like that, that's going to be a game changer. But a cut or any of the dings, never walked into a single fight 100%. It just doesn't happen. The training process in and of itself is very difficult, and mitigating as much of that risk as possible, even in a 10-week camp. You don't train with anybody you don't know. You certainly don't train with the new guy that just came in that that has something to prove, because he's going to use you to try to do that. So, you try to keep it simple, stick to the plan, and I think it's certainly manageable. We've seen lots of great athletes figure out how to manage this format and do it very well. Lance Palmer was a 2-time champ, Kale a 2-time champ. We've had a number, Nathan Schultz. They figured it out, and once they kind of got in that groove, they were off and running.
Did you feel when you were doing that, the 5 fights in 18 months, did you feel better from like your athletic shape point of view, or was that just in terms of like, I want to fight?
Well, I was one of those guys that never really let myself get that far out anyway. I enjoyed being in the gym, and in between fights, when I didn't have another fight staring me in the face, was when you could learn new stuff, play with new skills, go seek out that new workout partner, that new coach, and try and learn some new stuff. And that was always fun to me. I felt like a kid in a candy store, and I think once you're looking at figuring out which tools to sharpen to solve the next problem, it becomes a little more, it's not as much fun. You got to be directed and have those goals in mind. But I like that. I felt good about that, and those fights were going well for me in the last part of my career.
Yeah.
And it seemed, honestly, I felt like I stayed in better shape for a longer period because of that activity.
And when you opened your gym, how much of like what you learned throughout your career do you try to put into, this is the way our gym trains, and how much of it is kind of like, hey, come to our gym and sharpen your tools however you'd like?
Yeah, most of it is an attitude. Our motto is check your ego at the door. It's only going to get in the way. So we try to attract like-minded people. There's nobody in there that's going to try to prove that they're better at anything than you are. High tide raises all ships. Yeah. We can make each other better. Iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. That's kind of how we operate there. So, we have a particular system. We have a great coaching staff, a bunch of great partners, and you assimilate into that and fend for yourself. But at the end of the day, you're going to get pushed. You're going to get pushed to the limit. And that means you're learning new stuff. If you're not getting tapped out or knocked on your butt on a regular basis, you're not getting any better. If you're the big fish in the pond, then you're not progressing.
Yeah.
You're not embracing the sport. So we get a lot of folks that come in and just do their camps because we just have a great atmosphere. We keep it family and simple. It's nothing fancy, and we like it. It works.
You ever have anyone come in the gym, or maybe early on, where you might not have saw it at first, and then it became something big? Anyone stand out like that?
Gosh, so many. Obviously, Ryan, my son, came in,
of course,
dragging around the last name, and likens to Biagio Ali fighting on this Wednesday's card, and there's some similarities there. Obviously, he's got a target on his back from day one. Who has media chasing him around for their very first amateur fight? It just doesn't happen. So, and just like Ryan, Biagio's taken all of this in stride. He's a very humble kid. He's a very smart kid, and he's diligent. He puts in the work, and that was exactly how my son was too. So, as a coach and a father, that's what you want to see.
Of course,
you're proud of that for sure. Ryan's certainly one that comes to mind that came through that tough enough amateur program. And made a name for Ronda Rousey's one that came through that same organization. We do a lot of stuff with Tough Enough, and they do a great job with the amateur fighters. And that's no small feat. To match those guys up properly is a real challenge, because it's not like you have a plethora of tape to go back and look at. You're trusting coaches to be honest and forthright with their backgrounds and how good they really are.
How do your nerves compare watching your son versus, fighting in the cage?
It's always difficult when you give up that bit of control.
Yeah.
I can see things on the outside, and you hope to be able to make them recognize or see those same things too. And that's what makes you nervous, is that little lack of control. I'm way less nervous when it's me standing in there.
Of course.
And honestly, it wouldn't matter if it was my son or one of the other guys that were coaching. It feels the same. There's just that loss of control. So you want them to be successful. You saw their camp. You know how hard they work.
Yeah.
And you see that passion in them. And and that's really what it takes. And so you want them to be successful, and it's like it can be very frustrating.
Say, like, as a mixed martial artist who coaches and also commentates, do you ever feel that way on commentary? Obviously, you're not like biased one way or the other.
Yes,
but if you see someone, aren't you like,
and
dude,
you
you
bite
just have
your
to do
tongue
this to get out of there? Yeah,
you're literally trying to bite your tongue not to scream something out. Like,
yeah,
like Maurice Green a couple weeks ago. Like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you laying on the mat? Get your butt up and win this fight.
That's got to be
and
a
his
weird
coach
feeling on
is,
commentary.
One of the best that ever do it is giving him the opposite information. I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
When did you know Sean Strickland was a psychopath?
Sean is a wild man. He is. He's a very smart guy, and I love his passion for the sport.
I mean,
but
everyone does. Yeah.
God, you wonder if he has some filters at all.
Is he the guy that loves sparring the most you've ever seen?
I think he's certainly in that conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had Belfort in there,
of course,
and Vanderlei Silva and Forrest Griffin. I mean, those guys only have one speed. You turn them on or you turn them off. There's no in between. Yeah. There's no shifting gears. Those two end up matched up together. You're like, oh, somebody get the popcorn.
Yeah.
But yeah, Strickland's just one of those guys. He's a wild man.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's a great guy, and he puts in the work.
He really cares about the sport, it seems.
Absolutely.
The way he, that's something that I recognize with him. Obviously, what people talk about is his big sound bites, but how he cares about the sport as a whole is really, it makes you feel good as a fan.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And big fight coming up. Got a title fight.
Huge fight.
Mm-hmm. He's worked his way into this position where he's basically like put himself in that spot.
Crazy, yeah. I mean, it's so awesome that he's in the title fight, but if you said that a few years ago, I mean, coming off the motorcycle crash, like, it's crazy to think about. He's really built himself way the back up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at Mir. Mir was in that same boat.
Exactly.
Shattered his leg in that bike accident and came back strong and did real well for a long time.
Someone we have to bring up because of our listenership. You know, we've had some big fighters on the show and everything, but our comments, they're just enamored with Tim Sylvia.
Oh,
they want to know everything about Big Tim.
Yeah.
You obviously have an iconic win over the guy. What was that fight like? What was it like getting in there?
Well, that was definitely one of my favorite fights, and it was, obviously I know Tim well. We were friends. He stayed in my house and trained with me for about 3 weeks. This was before he ever fought Rico for the title and put himself in the title spot. He's just a great guy, down to earth. I was in the middle of a remodel. He was literally helping me work on the house, and then we'd go to the gym and
really
train.
Helping you around the house.
Yeah, he was a great guy, and we're friends to this day. I knew psychologically he was going to have a trouble with that fight because he's one of those guys that has to generate some animosity to go out and do his job, and we were already buddies.
And you
so
don't
I knew
feel
he was
that
going
way.
to. I've never felt that way.
Yeah.
I come from that wrestler's mindset.
Yeah,
I had to wrestle some of my best friends for the spot on the team.
Yeah.
One of us was going home pissed off. That was
crazy. Yeah.
So I mean, that was part of life. It's just how it was. It wasn't anything personal. This is what we do. It's who we are. We're professionals.
So when you look at what happened in the PFL at the PFL 6 we were at in Atlanta, do you see that decision as the right decision from the PFL from when they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are professionals. This is what we do.
Yeah,
and
you
I
have to
get
do
that
it.
he's godfather of your child and all of those things, and that's tough. It's always tough. It's tough to fight your friends. There's no way around that. But this is what we do, and that I'm glad that they made a statement. And there were some repercussions for that fight.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it calls to question the whole brand and the sport in a lot of ways. And I haven't really seen works unless I was in Japan, and it's kind of part of culture over there. And I'm looking at some of these fights over there. I'm like, this feels like a work. This does not feel like. I've never seen one in the States that I believed was a work. Everybody's talking about the Woodley fight with Jake Paul, and I'm like, no way. I know Tyron too well.
Yeah.
He was shaking his hand like he was
cared about
signaling
that fight,
him. I was like, he took it on short notice. There's no way he's going to go down. Not that he won't do that. And everybody thought that was a work. And there's been others.
Every time Jake Paul gets a knockdown or knockout, it gets accused of being a work. Like the Anderson Silva one, people thought was.
Yeah, and I thought Anderson had the goods to really challenge him and beat him, but it didn't happen. So I mean, you have to give him credit for what he's putting down.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've ever really seen a work in the U.S. That Hausch Manfio Nathan Schultz fight was probably the closest thing that I've ever seen to a work.
We were
in the United
cage
States.
side,
and it wasn't a work. They just weren't hitting each other. They weren't fighting.
They're sparring.
It didn't even feel like it was sparring. It felt like it was almost like
I hit guys harder in the sparring environment for sure.
How was it just juggling that as like a broadcaster? Of just kind
It
of
was
seeing
uncomfortable.
it unfold.
You know, it was uncomfortable because the last thing I want to do is disparage those athletes for any reason, under any circumstances. And that was a pretty serious circumstance, honestly. And you just kind of wanted to see them get after it, and they just couldn't do it. It just wasn't going to happen. So it sucks, and they're both great. I mean, obviously, both champs for us, Nathan twice and Hausch once. So they're both amazing athletes. It's just a shame.
Selfishly, as a fan, I'm like, oh, but we got Shane Burgos versus Clay Collard out of it. So,
right?
you know what? I'm all right
Oh
with
my
that.
gosh.
Yeah, what a banger
Just to
that
say
is.
there'll be nobody pulling any punches in that fight.
No.
I'd love to see Clay and Sean in the same room. They would just have a hell of a conversation.
Oh, yeah.
I think.
I'm sure.
We were talking with Clay before his last fight, and we asked him, he was walking in. It was kind of awkward timing because he was in the zone, but we were like, what are you listening to? And
He had headphones in, yeah.
I think the song he's told us was I See Dead People.
Yeah. We were like, all right.
He knocked out Stevie Ray that night.
That's definitely the mindset Clay Collard needs to get into before fights. Yeah.
Well, he's fun to interview. I mean, just the things that come out of his mouth are just so interesting and intriguing. His perspective on the world and all the adversity and tragedy that he's faced in the last few years, especially. He's just such a unique guy. It's hard not to root for him, honestly.
Yeah.
We try to stay as middle of the road as we can, but it's just tough not to root for a guy like him.
He's like a PFL showcase fight every time he fights, too.
Yeah,
He's one of the main guys for the company where he's going to have a banger every time.
I was saying it's funny because Shane's like the opposite outside the cage. He's we've got normally very mild manner, but inside the cage he's the same as Clay.
Psychopath.
He's a savage.
Yeah. This is absolutely a collision of two immovable objects coming on Wednesday night. It's going to be.
Then OAM is just kind of.
OAM I love outside the cage, too.
It's like he's doing his taxes in there. He's just like, this is what that's
right?
what I have
Pulls
to
his
do.
glasses down.
Yeah. And then, but last
Technician.
fight, he did. It was the first time I've really seen him get angry in the cage. I think there
He was pissed.
because his opponent kept leading with his head, and it was a little apparent. Maybe he wasn't. I'm not saying he was intentionally doing it, but it was putting him. And they were. I think the ref was blaming him.
They got like 3 clash of heads in that fight.
Yeah.
And OAM was just not happy. And his corner, I remember, was not happy at all.
Yeah, and it's rare to see him show any emotion.
Any
I think
emotion.
he stays right on, laser focused on what his plan was to win that fight. He's very unique in that way.
He's seeing him grow in the PFL has been really, really cool.
Yeah, he's a tough one.
Especially when the championship with the big knockout. Now I think it was like his only maybe second or third knockout of his career.
Yeah.
And that was a vicious, just boom, one hitter quitter.
That's like rising to the occasion. Yeah. That was awesome. GSP in his corner for it and everything,
that was
shouting
great.
out
That was
instructions
great.
for him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he deals with Bruno.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, short, stocky, pretty resilient. It's going to be an interesting fight.
Yeah, I can't wait for that.
I want to ask you about a fight your first fight with Chuck. It seemed like obviously at that time you were coming off a loss, but granted it was for the heavyweight belt. I feel like there was a weird kind of the bubble at the beginning of the Tito Chuck kind of like collision course. Did you feel in the moment like they were like, I don't want to say putting you in there like to lose, but it was almost like that's like what they wanted, or kind of like in the perfect world.
Look,
how did it feel?
They've been trying to get rid of me since day one. Put me in any fight they thought that I would get beat in to get rid of me.
Did you feel that in the moment?
Company. Yes, absolutely.
Why do you think that was?
40-year-old heavyweight champ. They didn't see me as being very marketable because of my age.
That's crazy because I view it
They
as the
wanted
complete opposite.
a younger guy. That's why they signed Pedro Hiza to a 9-fight deal when they bought the company, because they were sure he was going to bring in the Latin American and Brazilian crowd, and that was the biggest deal anybody had ever signed. And then who was he fighting? He's fighting me as a champ. So, and I was 40, going on 41 when that fight happened, and I just think I thought I wasn't marketable. I was over the hill already, and that was kind of the tone for most of my career. Very rarely did they ever get behind me.
That's so crazy to me.
The one time they get behind me was Supernatural, the Super Bowl weekend fight. It was the second fight against Belfort, and 20 seconds in, I get cut on my eyelid, of all places. What a strange place to get cut and get stitches. Getting your eyelid
stitches
stitched.
on the eyelid.
Oh, not fun.
Eyelid is
Talk about writhing on a table. Like,
Oh my God.
Wasn't that it hurt? It was just so weird to have somebody
they
that
got
close
someone
to your
up
eye.
just like
And of
pinning
course,
you.
then they have to leave those stitch tails long, because if they cut them short, they'll scratch your eye. So
Yeah.
they get these 4 long tails hanging out of my.
You get
front
4
of my
long
eye.
eyelashes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Gosh.
How do they even do that? They have someone just like pin your eyelid down to do the stitches, or how do they even?
He did a great job. Obviously, no scars, and that's the windshield wiper to your eyes. So it's a pretty important thing, which is why they stopped the fight and made me go right to the hospital. and get stitches. But yeah, it was just one guy.
In the moment, did you know, like, oh, I got to get to the hospital and get these stitches, or were you
No,
just
I
pissed
couldn't
that
figure
it
out what was wrong.
Yeah.
My eyes slammed shut. You know, I slipped the punch, got to the clinch, was my game plan to get my hands on Vitor and make him wrestle me.
Yeah.
And I got there, but my eyes slammed shut, and I couldn't figure out why. There was no blood. Finally, when John recognized that I was struggling with something, so he stops the fight. And the doctor comes in and does that. And as soon as she did that, the blood came out of everywhere.
Oh, God.
It slammed shut, but it didn't let any of the blood out.
My eyes can, like, water thinking about that.
It was really crazy.
That's
just
like,
a weird.
ugh.
And you know, at that time, the seam on the edge of the gloves was ragged. It wasn't rolled and stitched.
Is that what cut you?
And that's what cut me.
Wow.
He grazed me with that seam and sliced me from top to bottom.
Did you think I got to fucking sue this company? I would think
No,
I'm
they
suing. I'm
rolled-
never fighting
They
again.
rolled them after that. After the next set of gloves that came out, those seams were rolled in
They should
and
call-
stitched
They should
because
call
of
that
that.
The Couture gloves, yeah. That would have been nice.
Yeah, but
What do you
some
think
royalties.
about the gloves currently in MMA?
I
as a
like
whole?
the gloves.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the gloves are fine, and obviously we have to be able to grip. It's not boxing.
Yep.
You can't use a thumb loop, and that's the big difference. Is we need to be able to articulate our hands and use that grip. And so a thumb loop, which would prevent some of the pokes that we're getting, you know, and trying to create that rule where it's up or closed. It can't be out because a lot of guys get the errant. I mean, we had that Friday. Caught a finger in the eye, and it just happens. It's indigenous to. It happens in training too. It's something you get used to, and you work around it. There's
Getting
no way
used to
around
getting
it.
poked in
fix
the eyes.
equipment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no way around it. Yep.
That's just a different animal.
Oh man, I've had a couple bad ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does
When
your
that hap-
vision just go?
Yeah.
Like
It
for a couple
hurts.
minutes?
I mean, it's instantaneous, and it really hurts, and
Yeah.
it's this flash, and then you can't get your eye to open. And I've had a real bad one in wrestling, got poked in this eye, and the sheath that holds your eyeball filled up with blood would put you a lot of pressure on the nerve and can do serious eye damage if you're not careful. It can be very dangerous, but it's part of the sport.
Crazy, yeah. It's all part of it. I feel like so many guys from your era also have more of a like strong tough man mentality, probably because like you're saying, when you were signing up to fight MMA, there was the possibility of, hey, we're fighting multiple times a night.
Mm-hmm.
You think multiple people have that mentality of like, is it
Yeah.
a different mentality overall now from everyone fighting in MMA?
No, I don't think so. I think we all have very, very similar mindsets. I think things go in cycles. Technically, you see things come around and go around.
Yep.
That's how it is. Somebody pulls something off, it's like, oh man, I remember that technique, and then next thing you know, it becomes the fad.
Yeah.
The big thing now is what? Calf kicks.
Yep.
I was going to
And,
say, it's
you know,
like coming back to calf kicks
know,
when Jose Aldo
Nogueira
broke on the
pulls
scene.
off an
I felt like
anaconda
that was the
choke.
thing.
Now everybody's trying anaconda chokes, you know?
Yeah.
Mission Control and omoplatas. That was
Yep.
a thing for a while. It just seems to go in these cycles. And,
Yeah.
I think the striking, the ground game, and the transition game are all getting so much better all the time. The level of athleticism and the science of athletics as we progressed, I think you're going to see more and more guys fight into their 40s and get more out of their bodies and train smarter and take care of their bodies better. And I think that's what we're seeing, not just in MMA, but across the board in all sports.
Yeah, it definitely seems like in MMA, people are hitting their prime a little later. Like 35 is
Yep.
they're starting to hit their prime.
Yeah, and sports of experience are that way. I mean, the mean age for combative sports athletes in the Olympics is 29 years old.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're sports of experience.
And then a 19-year-old loses, and then the media, such as us, we're like, oh, he's finished.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's his career. Like he had a good run, but he's
Yeah.
19 years old.
Yeah.
20. Like
Guy like Sage Northcutt is like just getting started.
Yeah.
And he basically had like
like
a
his
whole
second
career
career,
already.
it feels like he's already had a career.
Yeah.
He's like in his 20s still.
Yeah, I think he's 24, 25.
How does it feel to
Crazy.
kind of be? You're kind of like the poster boy for that, for like getting it done at like an older age. You kind of were like a trailblazer for that.
Yeah,
in a
I
lot of ways.
mean, certainly other athletes in other sports have done it too. You know, Favre played for a very long time. There's been several in other sports, but I was probably one of the older ones that pushed that in MMA. Fought till I was 47. I didn't start till I was almost 34. And by most people's estimation, I was already over the hill.
Yeah.
And I think that set the tone for a lot of the matches I was in. I was counted out simply because of my age. Fighting younger guys, certainly that first fight with Belfort.
Yeah.
you know, he was smoking everybody, and my old ass comes in there. sure he was going to get me too. And
do you look at pictures of Belfort before and after and kind of smirk a little bit?
Well, I think everybody knew what was going on back there. That
then,
was before testing, and I don't think he was bashful about it either.
Got it.
So I saw that as an advantage in my mind. Those guys were worried about the wrong things. They were worried about how big and muscular they looked and how much they could bench press instead of technically and tactically how to solve the problem and beat that guy. Yeah. I saw that as an advantage.
The lactic acid buildup for a guy
you're
like
that's blow up in 2 minutes if I make you work hard, and it takes a lot of oxygen. To feed those muscles, and it's about endurance and durability. So I just said that there was a flaw, and it's an American flaw, I think. It's the same thing with cutting all this weight. That's a very American thing, too. You don't see a lot of the Europeans doing that, but we have this attitude, oh, man, if I'm great at 163, imagine what I'll be at 149 or 136. Like, you won't even be the same person after you cut that weight, let alone compete at the level you're used to competing at. It's a flawed mentality for sure.
Is there a way to fix that mentality?
I think we're fixing it. I think some of it through regulation. You're forcing guys not to be able to cut as much water weight and try to figure it out and do it right, because there's a right and a wrong way to do anything.
Yeah.
If you're cutting more than 10% of your body weight in water weight, you're cutting way too much water weight, and you're going to affect your performance. There's no way around that. It's a water-based system. That water is in your head, in that sac, and you're protecting your brain for a reason. You're getting punched in the head after you've dried out. It's a horrible thing to do. It's not good for you.
I've heard a few people say this actually this week, even talking because Alja fought it. People, I don't know, I fully believe in like the weight bully thing. If you make weight, make the weight. But how do you feel about it going to almost like a wrestling where they weigh in pretty much right before? So you pretty much have to be your natural weight.
It done that in collegiate wrestling. We had a couple of deaths from cutting too much weight. They didn't link this to creatine, but that was the big craze. The creatine supplement craze had come out. These guys were taking excessive amounts of creatine and cutting excessive amount of water weight. The byproduct in your kidneys to creatine is creatinine, and when that builds up, it'll shut your kidneys down. Your kidneys are a unique organ. They're one of the few organs that will operate at less than 100% and still function, but at some point they stop functioning, and all the other organs are going to go in domino fashion as soon as your kidneys shut down. So those two deaths in wrestling were, I believe, related to creatine and using excessive amounts of creatine plus coupled with cutting that water weight. These guys were cutting 18 and 20 pounds of water weight as a collegiate wrestler. That forced the NCAA to make a rule. Now they weigh in literally an hour before competition, or sometimes 5 hours, depending, but it's literally right before competition. So if you're cutting more than a couple pounds of water weight, you're probably going to affect your performance.
Do you think that would improve MMA at all if they move to something like that?
No, I think we need to give guys the proper, first of all, educate them about the right and wrong way to do it, and then give them the proper time to recover and rehydrate their bodies. Because cutting, 7, 8, 9 pounds of water weight, certainly for a guy my size, isn't detrimental. I'm going to rehydrate fine. What's irritating to me is that they took away the ability to get an IV. It's the most efficient way to rehydrate yourself. And why did they do that? Because guys that were taking performance-enhancing drugs were using IVs to flush their systems and mask those performance-enhancing drugs. So I got to bite the bullet because these guys are trying to cheat. That pisses me off. And I used to get IVs after every weigh-in. It's the most effective and efficient way to rehydrate your body.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, because of that plastic bag, they can tell if you've taken an IV or not.
Yeah.
Whether they see that hole in your arm or not, they can still tell in your blood.
It's messed up.
Which is weird, but
it's one of those problems that I don't know if there is ever going to be a good solution to.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's part of human nature too. Everybody wants that shortcut.
Yeah.
We started in the 60s. The Rome Olympics was the first Olympics that we started testing people. And it seems to be like this ever since. They come out with new drugs, they come out with new tests. They come out with new drugs, they come out with new tests. That's just how it works. And
yeah.
Would you say a large percentage of MMA fighters right now are using the drugs that can't really be
No, I
seen?
don't think it's rampant in our sport. I think there are always going to be people that look for that shortcut.
100%.
In every sport. It's that way across the board. I mean,
Yeah, we see guys
the
get
designer
popped all the
drugs
time.
and some of the this crazy stuff. I mean, look what just happened with Russia a couple,
Yes.
2 Olympics ago.
The
I mean,
Olympics,
pretty
yeah.
wild.
We were just
So
talking about that in the office.
it's I think it's part of human nature. Certainly when there's so much at stake financially and as far as fame and fortune on the line, whether you win or not, then some guys are going to look to cheat, look for that shortcut.
Yeah. Hopefully none of them cheating on the PFL card this Wednesday.
Yeah.
tested?
At the Garden. Yeah, of course they'll be tested. Shane
Yeah.
Burgos, like we said, Clay Collard. It's a great card. OAM. If you're in the city, I'm sure you can still get tickets. Go to the Hulu Theater. Like we said, it's an awesome venue for fighting. Everything's zeroed in on the cage.
Code Viva,
Code Viva, you'll get
40% off.
Ooh, 40%.
Yeah, the
That's
tickets.
a great
We'll
deal.
have the
Code
link.
Viva.
We'll
We'll
have the
put the
link
link in
in
the
the
description.
description.
Yep. Go watch yourself some fights. Randy Couture will be there cage side. Maybe you
Absolutely.
could scream his name and get a selfie with him or something. And thanks for coming in. We really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you guys.
Great talking to
Appreciate you guys having me on.